So generally, when I say the illegal immigrant crisis, you think of the southern border. But illegal immigrants have found a way to get into Canada and then come to the United States. So now we have a crisis at the northern border.
Tonight, America's newest border crisis, this one up north.
It's definitely a huge issue.
We're on an exclusive trip with local police patrolling near New York's border with Canada.
This is unheard of up here. I mean, I've never seen anything like this.
The Clinton County Sheriff's Office tells us they're encountering migrants, mainly Mexicans, illegally crossing over the border from Canada at record levels.
Now, when we talk about the U.S. immigration issue, we're really talking about illegal immigrants coming to the United States en masse and claiming asylum. Now, they've been coming over the southern border, but they've now recently found a way to get to the northern border in Canada and cross. Now, one of the more interesting parts of this migrant crisis is where they want to go. See, previously they were coming to the United States and, didn't really have any specific destination. But now migrants want to go to specific areas. They want to go to the sanctuary cities and sanctuary states like New York and Chicago. And the reason why they want to go to these places is because of the word sanctuary. If you make it to, let's say, New York State, they're not going to deport you. They're going to give you welfare benefits. Like recently, New York gave migrants $53 million in benefits, right? They give them free housing. So if you're a migrant, I want to go to New York. And let's not forget, specifically in the case of New York, the New York governor begged for migrants to come there.
The Statue of Liberty is inscribed. It says, "Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled young masses yearning to be free, the wretched refuse to a teeming shore." And that statement encapsulates our values. We want people to come here, despite where they came from or despite the circumstances that drove them to this country and to this state. We say you are welcome here. We are welcome with open arms, and we'll work to keep you safe. We'll not only house you, but we'll protect you. And the richness of the culture and the diversity and the food and the restaurants that we know are going to be coming because of these efforts are beyond measure. It's an extraordinary part of our story. And it's woven into the story of New York, and it makes us more vibrant.
So now, New York is begging people to come there, saying, however you get here, right? So Texas Governor Greg Abbott started busing people from Texas to New York because, hey, you guys wanted migrants.
The buses keep coming to New York City and Washington, D.C. At first, hundreds, now thousands of migrants arriving in the Northeast after being sent by the governors of Texas and Arizona.
Now, one thing I need to make extremely clear. The majority of migrants who are going to New York aren't being bused there by anybody. They're actually going to New York on their own. That's what all the statistics show.
Okay, New York City specifically has a right to shelter policy, meaning anyone who asks for shelter must get the shelter, which has actually made New York a far more desirable place for these migrants to go to. So the dominant narrative so far had been, Texas Governor Greg Abbott is the one who's busing all of these people or sending all of these people to New York City. But he actually accounts for a small fraction of the migrants who have arrived in New York City. So I want to take you to graphic 5 here, because as the New York Times reports, after crossing the southern border, thousands have made their way to New York with the help of officials in Texas. Governor Greg Abbott has sent thousands in a campaign to provoke outrage and force the federal government to tighten border security. So he has done that to an extent. However, Abbott's buses account for only a small fraction of the people who have arrived. El Paso, a Democrat-led city, has also sent new arrivals to New York at the migrants' request, officials there have said, and some people have made their own way. Essentially waiting to have the ability to work here legally, you're gonna need a place to stay. And so naturally, people are going to gravitate toward parts of the country that have these types of policies that are far more friendly to individuals in need of shelter.
Now, the issue with migrants currently is that how are you gonna get to New York? Because even if you get to the southern border, you still have the issue of Texas putting up razor wire and making it extremely hard to get into the country. They're literally fighting the federal government to try to enforce the southern border.
Well, the state is still installing razor wire at the southern border despite a court order saying federal border agents can just cut it down.
Fox 4's Dan Godwin here with more on this escalating power struggle between the state and the federal government. Dan?
And Lauren, Governor Abbott is apparently not overly impressed with the Supreme Court ruling that came down this week. His response has been to put up more razor wire at the border. New video from yesterday shows the Texas Military Department doing just that, beefing up razor wire installations in Eagle Pass along the border southwest of San Antonio. And yet, on Monday, the U.S. Supreme Court, in a 5-4 ruling, vacated a lower court decision and gave federal agents the green light to cut and remove the razor wire.
So the southern border is like a war zone. Razor wire, police, military, it's just crazy down there, right? Everybody's focusing on the southern border. And that's a hell of a long trip from Texas to New York. But if there was a way you can get to Canada and get to the northern border, there's no razor wire. There's barely anybody up there, right? You can essentially just walk across the border in the United States and then say, asylum, asylum, you're in, right? And it's so much closer to New York than it is coming from Mexico. So how do migrants get to Canada? Well, because of the trade agreement, you can actually fly from Mexico to Canada for $350. And that's what migrants are doing now. They're just getting to Mexico, jumping on a plane, flying to Canada, saying that they're on a quick little vacation, get off the plane, and then walk to New York from Canada. Check it out.
According to data from the U.S. Customs and Border Patrol, about 70% of the crossings occurred in the 295-mile Swanton sector, which includes the areas of upstate New York, New Hampshire, and Vermont. And in that sector, 3,100 people from 55 different countries were apprehended since October alone, more than the total of the past 4 fiscal years combined. Experts believe migrants who make it to Mexico and can afford a $350 one-way plane ticket from Mexico City or Cancun to Montreal or Toronto are making their way south to cross the border, where they are less likely to be turned away than those who are crossing at the southern border. The northern border is much longer than that of the southern border, and the ports of entry are often understaffed. There's also no fencing along the northern border, much of which is simply woods and dirt paths. The trek across can be dangerous, though. At least a dozen migrants, including families, children, and 1 pregnant woman, have been found frozen.
So did you hear those stats? There were more migrants that crossed from Canada into the United States in 1 year than it was in the past 4 years combined. That's a ton of people just coming across the northern border. And again, the Biden administration has just a blind eye to it. And all those people, guess where they're going? They're going to the sanctuary cities that said they wanted migrants.
In Moores, New York, local residents tell us not knowing who may be coming through their woods at night makes them uneasy.
I've had what I'm assuming immigrants come to my door late at night.
Local police tell us the Biden administration is not doing enough.
Does Border Patrol need more people up here?
Well, absolutely. There aren't enough people to be able to cover all this.
Last week, Border Patrol added 25 agents to this sector, some of them taken off the southern border. They say it will deter migration, but local police here say they need much more.
Now, we also have to recognize that we did have a border deal that I believe would have easily closed the border, right? It gave the president all these powers, you can close the border, blah, 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 blah. But it was blown up because Republicans don't want to give Democrats a win on a border right before the election, right? Because then Biden can go and run, hey, look, I got a border deal, we closed the border. They're not going to give him that win. That's why Trump was against it. Now, even though it's a political calculation that's going to hurt in the short term, I'm thinking they see the political benefit of leaving that on the table. Listen, people, right now, the Democrats are in trouble when it comes to this border crisis. In Chicago, essentially all the minorities there are revolting against the city government because they're a sanctuary city. Same thing happening in Denver. Same thing happening in New York. And these are all Democratic strongholds where people are now waking up and saying these stupid policies are hurting us, are hurting the minority community. And you can see it in the polling where now Republicans have a larger share of the black vote than they've done in the past 40 years.
Another day, another poll showing Democrats losing ground with demographics that they typically had widespread support among. Now, a new poll by Gallup shows that Democrats are particularly losing support among Black and Hispanic adults. So let's get into the details. The Democratic Party's wide lead over Republicans in Black Americans' party preferences has shrunk by nearly 20 points over the past 3 years, in just 3 years. If you're not paying close attention to what's happening in cities like Chicago or New York City when it comes to the migrant crisis and how minority residents of those areas are reacting to it, you're making a huge mistake because they're furious, okay? They are furious. So black and brown voters in Chicago, in New York, they see the crisis, it's at their doorstep, and they're like, I don't understand. This is based on federal policy. Why isn't Biden doing anything about it? So when they see their quality of life decline, because suddenly there's a massive influx of people into their city, which they do not have the resources to house, to feed, to keep safe. And when they see the scraps that they're given now being shared with a large, migrant population that's come into their city, they start getting angry. Okay, it's not because they're bad people, it's not because they're racist, it's not because they're anti-immigrant, but you tell me if 170,000 people in a few months show up to your front door and suddenly you're seeing encampments all over the place and it seems like chaos outside your front door, how are you gonna feel about it?
Yeah.
That's what's happening.
So this has become an issue that is extremely, extremely beneficial to Republicans in an election year. And on one end I can say do what's best for the country, but on the other end I can understand them saying, well, we're looking at the long-term goal here. Long-term goal is to win in November. If we allow Biden to win now, that makes it easier for him to win in November, where if we don't deny him that as of right now, then we have a better shot at November because everybody is worried about this issue. But as always, tell me where I'm wrong in the comment section. Tell me where you disagree. Tell me if you think that the migrant issue isn't a serious issue here in America, which I think you're 100% wrong. Just turn on the news and you'll see what I'm talking about. But don't forget, like, share, subscribe, do all the great YouTube stuff. My name is Nate the Lawyer, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.